Hello and welcome back. I'm Joseph Hoffman, and in this lesson, we're going to learn the B section of Autumn Moon. Let's get started by checking out the score. The B section begins here in measure 11. So let's check out the right-hand part. We begin with a half note, which usually looks pretty easy if we're thinking of rhythms. But remember that we're counting subdivided 16th notes. So one way to make sure you don't rush that half note, which is a very common mistake when we've had all these 16th notes, so we get used to playing fast. And then sometimes it's hard to slow down for slower notes like this half note. One way to keep that from happening is to continue to count in your mind, or out loud at first when you're practicing, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. That will keep you from rushing that half note. And then here in beat 3, you'll notice we get a polyrhythm. Polyrhythms are when you have two rhythms happening at the same time. And in the right hand, your thumb or finger 1 is playing that G on the bottom, while your finger 5 is playing that E, which is just a dotted quarter note, 3E and a, 4E and a. See, while your finger 1 is holding that G, your top fingers are playing a totally different rhythm, 4E and a. And then here on beat 1, the same thing. We have another polyrhythm. Your finger 1 is playing the G again, while your upper fingers are playing 1E and a, 2E and a. And notice this and is actually going to need that G, so you will have to let go of your thumb to make way for this upper voice. It's almost like we have two voices happening at the same time, played all by the right hand. So you'll have 1E and a 2E. You've got to let go of that G to make way for that top voice, 2E and a, and then 3E and a, 4E and a. Remember not to rush the half note. Let's try tapping the rhythm while we count the beat and tap the top voice. So you're going to ignore this bottom stem down rhythm. So looking at the top notes, let's count the rhythm. I'll count 3E and a, 4E and a, and then we'll start. So count out loud with me while we tap. 3E and a, 4E and a, 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a, 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. Now on your own, can you pause the video and try tapping and counting out loud measures 13 and 14. If it helps you to write the counts in the music, go for it. Or if you'd like to imagine it in your mind, whatever works best for you, pause, practice this rhythm, and then press play and we'll try it together. Okay, let's start right here, counting the beat out loud. I will start with 3E and a, 4E and a to get us ready, and then we'll start on 1. Here we go. 3E and a, 4E and a, 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a, 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. Let's try to play it. All right, let's do the right hand part here in measure 11. Fingers 1 and 2 are on G and B. And that gets our finger 5 ready for this next chord, which will have an E. 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a, 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. Notice that we have on this chord, the next note says a 5, and you might be wondering, well, that's a bad fingering because it breaks the legato, but remember, we're going to add damper pedal, so it won't matter. Since the pedal will be down, it creates a legato for us. So it makes it a little bit easier on the fingering to do it that way. Okay, pause the video and work on measures 11 and 12, right hand alone, then press play to go on. Now, can you figure out the left hand on your own? Look at measures 11 and 12. What's the first chord here in measure 11? Play it. If you're playing this, you're correct. Now, can you figure out the next 3 chords on your own? Pause to work out the left hand part and then see if you can play it hands together. Measures 11 and 12 only. Pause to work on that, and then press play to go on. Okay, your left hand should have been this E and G, it's a fifth, and then C and E, and then G and D, and then D and D. Now, if your hands are too small to reach an octave, I would just leave off the top note and play that. Okay, but if your hands can reach a full octave, great. And if they don't worry, your hands will grow and you'll get that. So now together we get 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... Pause if you need more work on that. Otherwise, let's go on and look at measures 13 and 14. I'd like to challenge you to figure this out on your own, but let's do one or two things together. What's this first interval in the right hand? We start on a G, and where do we land? If you set an octave all the way up to G, you're correct. That's an octave. Very exciting interval. And then also notice the left hand comes up to treble clef land here. So even though it looks like that chord is going down, because of that treble staff, clef, our left hand has to come up here. Now we're on middle C, E, G. Now, I'd like you to figure out the rest. Pause the video and work on measures 13 and 14, and then press play to go on. Okay, you should have gotten this. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3. Notice the left hand has this chord again that we saw earlier, a D, F sharp, G, and the right hand's on A, so they're all nestled really close to each other right there. Okay. Now let's put that together back to measure 11. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a... Pause the video and work on putting that whole section together, then press play to go on. Now, let's check out this next line here in measure 15. I added an expressive marking, dolce. Dolce is an Italian word that means sweetly, tenderly. So this line should be played very sweetly. Should be delicate, gentle, and sweet. And while we're looking at music words, do you remember what poco rallentando means? Poco means a little bit, and rallentando means gradually slow down. So we'll slow down a little bit as we come up to this fermata. And then we go back to regular speed when we see the word a tempo. Now, let's check out these rhythms, because these are rhythms we haven't seen so far in this piece. You'll notice, because of where the beams are, that we start off with 2 16th notes in a row. So we'll have 1 E, and then the and gets taken up here on this 8th note. Now, this curved line here between these two B's, is that a slur or a tie? If you said a tie, you're correct. So we'll play 1 E and then we hold that note down. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Notice how I tied that B, 3 E and, oops, I messed that up, 3 E and 4 E and a. So let's try tapping this. I'll count 3 E and 4 E and then we'll start. 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and tie it. 3 E and tie it. Okay, so we just have ba 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 tie, ba 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 tie. Now, can you write in the counts? Pause the video and write in the counts for measures 16 and 17. Then practice tapping it while you count the beat out loud. Notice the difference between the ties, like this right here, and the slurs like that. Pause to practice the rhythm of measures 16 and 17 on your own, then press play and we'll look at it together. It's really important to watch the rhythms carefully, because if you notice here, we start off with a pair of 16th notes followed by an 8th note, which we used to call ticky-tee, but then it's tied to a ti-ticky. Notice that here the 16th notes come on the second half of the beat. So now with our more advanced subdivided counting, that gives us 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Let's try that together. Ready, go. 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Pause if you need more practice with that. But otherwise, let's keep going and now try both of these measures together. Ready, go. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Now these rhythms are so important you get correct or the piece won't sound right. So pause if you need more practice with that. Otherwise, let's look at what's happening in the left hand, because these rhythms are tricky too. We have a flagged 8th note, which gets half of the beat. Let me actually change color here. And so we need to be really careful of where the left hand plays in relationship to the right hand. So we see that this note plays with this note, but this quarter note plays on the and of beat 1. So make sure that this lines up with this on the and then beat 2 happens, and then because this was a quarter note, this has to come on the and of 2. So I'm going to add an extra and in here for the left hand here. So together we'd get 1 E and a, 2 E and a. See how I played that B right on the and of 2. And then 3, these line up, E and these line up, and then 4 is tied, and then this comes on the and of beat 4. All right, so notice the left hand has this pattern of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or for counting the subdivided beat, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Without counting like that, putting these hands together is going to be very, very hard. But with counting, you can do it. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Let's try to play it. Can you tell me the first note here in measure 15 for the right hand? What's the letter name? If you said G, you're correct. So finger 1 is on G. We have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Pause the video and I'd like you to work on those two measures with counting out loud. Pause to work on that, then press play to go on. Now, let's challenge ourselves by going ahead and trying the left-hand part too now. So we have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And don't forget to switch back to finger 5 there on that D so you're ready for that next A. Okay, pause the video and work on the left-hand part alone with counting out loud, then press play to go on. Now let's put that hands together. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Pause to work on that. Hands together. Go super, super slow at first. Then press play to go on. Now here in measure 17, we have something I really love. And that's playing in thirds. It's really hard to do because you've got 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5. You're playing a tricky fingering, but I really want you to do it this way. Don't do this because that won't be legato and it's not a very professional fingering anyway. You want to use the advanced fingering. It might feel really hard at first, but this is something, you know, if you're bored at school one day, maybe you're waiting while the teacher's passing something out, or you're driving in the car and you're kind of bored, you can practice this on your lap or in the palm of your hand. Practice going 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, just touching any flat surface, because that's a fingering that pianists use a lot in more advanced music. 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, because you got to be able to do it pretty quickly in this piece. Isn't that beautiful? I love that sound. And then we get this one unique chord that we don't hear any other place in this piece, this B major chord. We use this voicing for that. Okay? Now let's look at just right hand alone. In measures 17 and 18, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3, we have a fermata. Okay, pause the video and work on that. Right hand alone, then press play to go on. Now the left hand is very similar to what we had before. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a, then we get what? This B and a F sharp to build this B major chord. A little bit of a surprise right there. Okay, pause and work on the left hand alone, and then if you want to challenge yourself hands together, great. Otherwise, you can save that for later on this week. But pause to work on however much you want to in measures 17 and 18, then press play to go on. Now, let's check out the pickup notes going into measure 19. What do you notice? You might have noticed that we have an a tempo, which means we go back to the regular speed. And we need that marking because we slowed down here, we had a fermata, and then this tells us go back to full speed. You might have noticed this crescendo mark, we have a forte now, and molto espressivo. This is a new Italian word, probably. Espressivo means expressively, which means a lot of emotion and feeling. This should be a very exciting part. I feel this is the climax of the piece. You might also have noticed that this is very similar to the ending of the A section, which we learned in another lesson, but this time the left hand is down an octave lower. That's going to make it sound even more powerful and dramatic. Let's try to play it. So this section will be just like what we had before, but now with the left hand down an octave. Okay, pause and work on the right hand alone, left hand alone, and then maybe if you want, try it hands together, super slowly at first. But this will feel very similar to what we learned last time in the A section, but now the left hand is just an octave lower. Pause to work on that, then press play to go on. Now, as we come to the pickup notes of measure 23, we have some rhythms we've seen before, and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and then right here, let's take a very careful look at what's happening here, because there are a lot of curved lines and we really need to be careful which are slurs and which are ties. So I'm going to point to some lines and you tell me slur or tie. What about this line here? If you said slur, you're correct because these three notes are different. Now, what about these curved lines down here in the bass staff? If you said ties, you're correct because this note to this note, same note, this note to this note, same note. So we'll just hold this down. We'll play it once and then hold it fermata. Now, what about up here? What about this curved line right here connecting these two stem down notes? If you said slur, you're correct. Notice that this note is a space note, G, below middle C, going to a step down to F, technically F sharp because of our key signature, below middle C. Notice we've got our middle C line, but we've got 2 ledger lines below middle C. So that's got to be an F sharp. So we have G slur to an F sharp. So we're going to play that very legato. And now what about this curved line up here? Slur or tie? If you look carefully, it's an A to an A below middle C, but it's the same note. So we're going to hold that down. So see all these curved lines, 4 curved lines, and they all look pretty much the same, but one of them is a slur and the rest are ties. So when we get here, because this is tied and this is tied, we don't even play those notes. We're still holding it down. This top note is also tied. There's only one note we play on this entire chord. Isn't that kind of crazy? That's why we have to analyze slurs and ties so carefully, because sometimes a slur will just be tucked in there, hidden, but we've got to play that one F sharp right here while we hold down those other 3 notes. It will sound like this. I'm going to play starting right here on this first note of the ties. See, I played a D and a D in the left hand, and then I play a G and an A in the right hand, and then all I have to do is take that G and turn it into that F sharp, and we've got it. The other notes I just hold down. Let's try to play it. So now pick up to measure 23. Let's look at the right hand alone. You might notice that this is very similar to the start of the piece. But now we're forte, because we had that forte mark way back in measure 19, and it's still forte. A dynamic marking doesn't change until you get a new dynamic mark. So we're still forte here, and we're an octave lower. And we finally decrescendo a little bit there. Okay, let's practice just these last 2 chords going into the fermata. So we have this chord here, then we've got to pick up our finger 1 on that G and lower it to the F sharp while we hold down everything else. We don't get to let go. Let's just look at right hand. So we're playing that G and A, then we've got to pick up our finger 1 and move it down to the F sharp. Play G and A, pick up the thumb, hold down the A, don't let go of the A because it's tied, and then move down to the F sharp. Try that a few times. Play G and A, pick up your thumb, go to F sharp. Okay, now let's add in the 2 notes before, starting here on the C. Now you try. Good, now let's add in all the notes before. 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. Pause the video to work on that right hand alone, then press play to go on. Now, can you figure out the left hand? Where is the first chord in measure 23? What notes do you see? You said an E and a B, you're correct. Then what? Can you find the next chord? It goes down a skip to here. And then can you find the next chord? If you're playing this, you're correct. And then it goes to an octave again. Again, if your hands can't quite reach that, just play the bottom note. Okay, then hands together we get. Now pause and work on that section, hands together, and then press play to go on. Now, after this fermata, what do you notice? Here are some pickup notes, and what do we have? We return to an A section. But it's a little different this time. And I'd like you on your own to go through maybe later this week or today if you like, or right after this lesson. And I'd like you to figure out what's happening. Check every note because there are some patterns that repeat from before, from the first A section. But there are some things that are different about this A section. And if you don't look carefully, you'll miss them. So I challenge you to hunt for every note, every little change. There's one thing I want to alert you to, and that is this symbol down here, which we haven't seen for a while. It's an 8VA symbol. 8VA means to play one octave higher than the notes you see written. And this little dashed line means all the notes under that dashed line, all the way until that dashed line stops, every note under that little dashed line means play one octave higher. So this note we'd usually play here, but we're actually going to play it here. Everything will just be one octave higher than written. Also, just a little hint, don't forget to check out the dynamics. Notice that as we get to the end of the song, we're getting softer and softer. And the rallentando will have a slowing down to the final fermata. But the rest, I'm going to leave you to figure out on your own. Oh, one more hint, though. Don't forget that we change from bass clef back to treble clef, so the left hand is coming up into treble clef land, starting here. This one kind of warns you that on the next line, you've got that change. Great work today learning the B section and previewing the ending of Autumn Moon. Happy practicing and see you next time. Are you ready for some more moon jokes? Am I ever? Okay, how do lunar astronauts say they're sorry? Well, I don't know. How? They apologize. Okay. What is the moon's favorite social media platform? I don't know. Facebook. That's pretty bad, you know. Yeah, I know.